Hi, welcome to Two Non-Doctors. I'm Liz Mealy.
I'm Maria Shahada.
We've probably talked 4 times a day every day for the last 3 days, but for some reason I felt bad because yours have been like real problems and I've been like, I want to kill everybody on the internet. Like mine have just been minor annoyances that you have to hear about because you're my friend. I don't know if I've always been like this or like comedy has made me like this, but someone's like, how are you? And I'm like, like it's just all like there's no like niceties or pretending or you pull it out of me a little bit. I'm like, oh my God. Like it just I think it might be that I'm Italian and it's just that gregarious, like, oh, the baker and the shoemaker. I don't know why that had to rhyme, but but like it's this kind of like, I don't know. I do wonder if there is, I know this is making excuses for my personality, but I do wonder if there is some kind of like generational, like my problems are your problems, or if it's comedic training, or I'm just a shitty
I
person.
think it's because you're one of 5 kids and you're like, if I don't talk, someone else is gonna. So
I have to fight for my attention even in my 30s.
yeah.
I was texting you and I had to just say it to somebody so I didn't feel, it almost feels like a burden, like clearly it's a burden on other people, but it's almost like if I don't get this thing out, I'll ruminate on it and I know it's not important enough to carry. So I posted a bunch of pictures. I found all these animal pictures of me and it made me laugh. Like
Yeah.
it's first of all, my face is different in every picture and then it's just every animal I've ever, because everywhere I go, I'm just like, oh, I want to hold it. I'm a cat lover. That's what I am, but I just love animals. So I posted all these different pictures of me holding animals. Last picture is me holding an axe. And half the comments were some kind of sexual innuendo of me holding a chicken, because they called it a cock, and me holding a kitten where they called it a pussy. And it just made me so viscerally angry, like want to throw my phone across the room angry. And half of it is like it's not, it's a chicken, it's a girl animal, it's not even like you're bad. Like remember when we were kids and you had to be like, the chicken goes bark and the rooster goes, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like we all were taught the difference between all these animals. You're fucking 40, it's a chicken, stop. And then the fact that they always have to make sexual jokes, I can't tell you how much that repels me and how angry it makes me, mostly from a comedic standpoint, from a, this is low hanging fruit comedic
Tell you
garbage.
what else is low hanging. Right.
Exactly. And you just want to be like, you should be embarrassed by doing the worst, lowest hanging fruit joke to a professional comedian. Right there, you should already, my pen, I was yelling with my pen. Right there, you should already be angry. You should already be embarrassed. But then it's like, who wants, like, I don't post pictures of my boobs. I'm not posting pictures of my ass. I'm barely posting pictures of myself other than doing stand-up. What makes you think I want that sexual attention? Even though I think you should be able to have your boobs out and not be fucking talked to about your body the whole time. But I'm posting a picture of a chicken.
Dude,
Like,
I think guys would get off to like a Mrs. Butterworth bottle. Like, I don't think it takes anything. Like, I think when like the internet, you can watch porn all day, every day. And I bet 70% of men do. And so they take that mindset into the rest of the internet. And so they get on Instagram after just watching what it could be mindless. They're just watching like hours and hours of porn, and then you post a picture of a chicken and they go, huh, cock. You know, it's just like
yeah,
don't
and
do
I
it.
should
It's
be grateful that most of my fan base and most of the people that interact with me, it's a friendly, you know what I mean? It's not like, I mean, YouTube is a different story, but at least on like my Instagram account, most of my social media where you have to choose to follow me as opposed to a video shows up in your feed, this is coming from a place of appreciation, but I don't think they understand, first of all, how much you get inundated with just the wrong kind of attention. I feel like social media is a way of putting out what is my priority, what do I care about? And every day I'm like, comedy, 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 good comedy, cats and comedy, comedy, cats, comedy, comedy, cats. And they go, do you want like a shitty joke that has nothing to do, like, that's not a good example, but like it just
no,
feels like,
it's like going to the opera and they're like, look at the tits, and you're just like, this isn't the place for it. This isn't, I mean, look,
It's
there are definitely Instagram people, friends, comedian friends of mine
yeah.
who, like one girl, like spread eagle with like a text box between her legs. Like there are girls who do go for the
Yeah.
attention and that's all good, but you don't, you literally don't. You're just like, I'm innocent cat lady,
Yeah.
like
I'm
lover, cat
literally
lover.
holding a picture of a koala. Like, come on, man. I
Yeah.
just like to hold animals. Those pictures are literally at a like a 10-year-old innocent level. And there is a part of me that's angry that not to say, I'm not innocent, blah, blah, blah. I know I'm an adult, but there is a part of me that's like, why do I have to hear that? Like, why do I have to like, I'm actually one person that doesn't really delete their comments. I kind of just like, if you say I suck, if you say I look like shit, if you say I'm stupid, I'm just kind of like, people should know that that's the type of attention you get, both good and bad, and I just leave them up. But yesterday was the first time I was so fucking annoyed that I couldn't just post a picture of me holding a chicken without every single dude making some kind of cock reference where I was just like, I I'm throwing everything
Yeah,
off
I
my
know.
desk.
So by the time you're done with this rant, your whole building's gonna get burnt down.
But that's what I'm talking about, like this irrational anger. It doesn't matter.
It's
I
not
know.
irrational. It is infuriating because it's just like, what? Like, can't you just stop talking and thinking about sex for like a minute? At least on my
Yeah.
profile, I'm not asking for the attention.
It's just not the attention I want. I kind of feel like if I just posted a picture of like flower watercolors every day, they still would find a path to be like, oh, that must be wet like your pussy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're just like,
Yeah.
how? How do you always squeeze it in? It just, I don't think they understand how inundated women in general are, but then take it to a new level of having like a fan base or just getting more attention online than normal. It's just exhausting. And then I've also met guys that like that's the only type of joke they make in person. And you're just like, hey man, like as a comedian, let me help you with structure. But also these jokes have been done before. Like let's
Like, say we all think the lowest common denominator joke. Let's
yeah.
just say, for generosity, we all have these thoughts immediately. First time any kind of sexual innuendo thought comes in. I would love to get to a point as a society where 99% of us just bypass that first one because we all know it. We're all thinking it. It's not funny
Yeah.
anymore. And let's go to the more creative ones of
And I
not even sexual, but like,
Yeah, but I think
just
that's
have
also
better
like
thoughts.
I think because we've trained our minds to do that, I think half of the frustration is like 50 people left that comment. Do you know just on a numbers game how uncreative you look, let alone the context of it? So I think there's a part of me that's like do better just because you're talking to a comedian, but also are you at board meetings saying your first thought? If you can control that at your job, why can't you control it? That's the other thing is people just think because we can be crass on stage and we can be sexual, which I barely am. I barely even talk about it on stage, that we're somehow like that's what I've noticed is from like 15-year-old fans to 70-year-old fans think it's okay to tell me those like guy walks into a bar, something sexual happens after. Like those kind of cliche jokes. And like the amount of time an old man has told me like a very sexual joke to be like, here's one for you. And you're like, you're older than my dad. like I'm just like, I don't like
Yeah.
this. I do think some of it is our profession and they think it's okay because it's in a joke form, but it really is the fact that I'm like, be more creative. Just you got to be more creative. Like you're going to annoy me, let alone make me uncomfortable.
We spend a lot of time thinking about how to not be seen as sexual. What's the word I'm trying to say? We spend a long time
Sexualized?
trying to not be objectified by men because we're on stage anyway. For whatever reason, comedy and stripping is already equated in like a lot of older generation people's minds.
Yeah,
And so we've worked really hard to be like, listen to the words I'm saying. Stop thinking of me as that,
as an object.
as an object. And then you make a joke like that. Like I was watching Mad Men and Joan is this character that came up from being like a secretary and then she was like head secretary. She just like rose through the ranks. And then she found a piece of paper where like somebody had drawn her like in a sexually compromised position. And then he just undercut her and basically called her a slut. And it's just like just by that alone, like you can just undermine somebody's like hard work, effort, years. We've put years into being a comedian and you post a picture on Instagram and like luckily no one called you a slut. I got called a slut on stage like before lockdown. I did a joke and somebody
Really?
was like slag and I was like, wow. And it just undermined you. And it's just like suddenly like is that all I am then? Like
Yeah.
So I think that's why it induces so much anger. It's just like, you don't get to
It,
just reduce me to this.
yeah, I think you're right. I think it's something where it's just like, even when I'm clearly being just a person in a room, you still have to go sexual. You'll never let me forget that I have a vagina, and that vagina is for a sexual purpose, and I just happen to have a mouth somehow hovering above it that seems to
Which
not
is
shut
also
up.
for sexual
Yeah,
purpose. It's
yeah,
just like,
exactly.
you're
But
using
it
that
is,
hole for the wrong thing, lady.
yeah, yeah, sweetheart, less talking. But it is, and I think, and it's so funny because, like, we talked about in the New Year's resolutions part of one of our episodes, that I wanted to dress more feminine. Like, I've always been scared. I think when I was younger, because of just showing off my body in general, but then in comedy, you spend so much time being told that if people are looking at you, they're not listening to you. And I was really young when I started, and I'm a curvier person. So I always kind of wore baggier clothes or like sweatshirts, like anything to kind of hide
Yeah,
my
I did
physique.
the same. It was t-shirts and jeans.
Exactly, because you just, and so, I started to dress a little more feminine in the sense that maybe my jeans were tighter and my shirt was more form fitting, but I still was always dressed down. I was always dressed to like go to the grocery store, not go on a date. And to the point where like I struggled when I was trying to date, because I was just like, okay, maybe I could go home and change, or, I'll change out of these shoes. I still don't wear heels because there's something about heels. I think in some ways I've spent a good chunk of my life trying to be seen as professional and trying to be seen as worthy of listening to. And then to do something that has nothing to do with sex, has nothing to do with that kind of attention, and you still get it. It's just exhausting.
Yeah. Could you imagine giving a speech like "I have a dream" and then somebody at the end being like, "Love your tits"? You know what I mean? It's just like, are you listening at all? Fuck
Yeah, at all. You're just like, ugh.
it.
That's my rant. It's not even, our chats have just turned into me truly
No,
just
I mean, no,
ranting.
but I think that's a worthwhile rant. And I think that men need to know they need to do better. If for nothing else, than just for just comedic respect.
Yeah. Yeah. Should we calmly go into announcements?
Yeah.
Thank you to all our patrons. We appreciate everybody that gives to our Patreon. We have so many fun bonuses. We also give out stickers. We have early access. Starting in end of February, early March, we'll be having even more weekly bonuses. Yeah, just thank you. We appreciate you. We got fun stuff for you.
Yeah. Follow us on the socials, Twitter, Facebook. Why do I need you here? I'm like, where are you going? I'm in the middle of announcements. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, at two non-doctors, full word doctors, and the number two. And then Instagram is at two non-DRS. Please subscribe, rate, and review us. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, or even if you don't, if you leave us a review, it makes us feel good. It helps us get seen, and all good things happen for us if you could just take a couple minutes of your time to leave us a good review.
And just baby announcement. I'm doing another Zoom diner. It's a new material workshop show that I've been doing since the beginning of all this. And the very funny Maria Shahada will be on this one, as well as Carmen Lynch. So it's February 7th, 4 p.m. Eastern time, some random
9
European
p.m.
time.
9 p.m.
9 p.m. Like,
Every time you say times for the podcast, you do Eastern time, and then I have to
do the math.
translate it, and I actually kind of resent you a little bit for it, because I'm just like, why doesn't my time matter?
It's not that it doesn't matter. It's literally because it hurts my brain. No
Yeah, but
exaggeration.
I mean, my brain's not that much smarter than yours.
That's
Me
not
being
true.
lazy.
It's not true. I also just assume, since you've been living there for like 4 years or whatever, that like you could just do it in your head now. Like everything's measured in, was it milliliters, whatever
I actually
metrics
cooked
you use.
brownies today, baked them, and nope, I still need to look that up. But I know what you mean. Huh.
Like a lot of Europeans use military time, or we call it military time, but they'll use the, when it's the full
24-hour clock.
Yeah, like or like my buddy Prakash, his phone is that, and I'm just like, what time is it? Like, I'm just like, I get so angry. Like, I'll look at his phone and I'll be like,
Do you
do I
know
have do I have to go or not?
that was a very expensive lesson for both of us when we tried to take trains over here, because we would
Yeah.
just fuck the timing, miss the trains.
Oh my God. The amount of times we've missed trains because of that. And I'm like, speak English in your numbers. Like, just having full American meltdowns. Oh my God. Yeah, it stresses me out so much. Especially,
We couldn't get through the tube turnstiles Cause I don't know, I fucked something up and like the cards, it just didn't work. And like we had to wait in this really long line to talk to a teller to figure out what was wrong and why I couldn't get through. And then I just looked at like, it was such a busy station. And I just looked at all the people going through while I stood in this line. And I was just like, everybody here figured it out. Like,
It's probably the hardest I've laughed where I just looked crazy because we were like running late to a spot. We didn't know what we were doing. We're like, why? Like it's a subway. Like we've done this a million times in a million different places.
we had been held up by so many small things, so many misunderstandings, mistimings. Just fucking the Oyster card just didn't work for just because we were American.
Yeah.
And like and by then it was just like, fuck this country. It's just like you just get held up. You just keep learning all these tiny horrible lessons.
My favorite of traveling overseas, especially London, was in New York, the trains never run on time. So I'd always give myself a half-hour buffer of just trains stopping, trains being late, being underground for 10 minutes for no fucking reason. So I always factored that in. And I was showing up like 45 minutes early to all my spots and like just couldn't fit. And it was just because it just worked more efficiently.
The trains
like,
work really well here.
More trains. So you
do you remember? Yeah. When the DLR, we missed it and you were like, God damn it. And like your little let go hand was like flaring in the air and you were screaming and shouting at the back of the train, which it's not even driven by a conductor. There's no conductor on that train. Who are you yelling at? And then I was like, Liz. And then I point out the sign and it said like the next train was in 1 minute.
No, I swear to God, it was like pulling up as the other one left. And like, you literally look insane where they're just like, did she really need to be 1 minute earlier than like what's happening?
Seriously,
right now?
But it's because if you miss a New York subway train, like it could be like days. Like you have no idea.
Fucked.
One of my favorite jokes of yours is like when you miss the last train home, and it's because like this couple they're like, let's slow down because they're like, oh that's not our train, so they slow down, and then you miss it, and you're like, so I turn around to find them because I have time now.
People are starting to see where my anger comes from. Fan mail.
Yeah.
Fan mail. Okay. This email is from Andrew. He says, hey, Liz and Maria, I was listening to your recent episode and around the 47-minute mark, you talk about how people pleasing is actually controlling and manipulative of others and not just something that is damaging to yourself. I've been struggling to explain this concept to someone, mostly because I only have a beginner's grasp of it. I come from a family that's very conflict averse and where a lot of people have very heavy people pleasing tendencies or are codependent. It's taken me a lot of learning to realize that there were issues with boundaries, and it helps to be able to articulate to others why I'm not choosing to act the way that I am and to set and defend certain boundaries that are different than what I've had in the past. It's easy to get into the debate. It's just like, I feel like I'm cat pleasing. It's easy to get into the debate of someone doing something for you that you didn't ask them to do, or whether or not you should be grateful, or they just shouldn't have done it in the first place, or shouldn't be mad when you say or try to guilt you. There is a fine line between boundary setting in this way and just being kind of an asshole. If you have any resources where I can better explore how to explain the roots of manipulation that are involved in people pleasing, I would really appreciate it. Thanks, Andrew. I read that email and I was like, that feels like the conundrum. This kind of like, especially if you come from like a conflict averse family, which I definitely did, and you come from a people pleasing family, which I definitely did. And then I just feel like I was programmed to say yes and override any actual real feelings I have towards doing something or people in general. Saying no and setting boundaries feels so wrong to me. And I have so much guilt associated to it. A good example is my little sister. We're really close. She'll call me up and she'll be like, hey, do you have time to talk? And I technically do. I don't have a job right now. I do a podcast once a week. I technically do. But there are other things I need to get done. I've allotted this time. It would really fuck up my day if I talk to her in this moment. So I have to be like, hey, I'm actually like, I can't talk right now. Maybe we could talk tomorrow. I'm sorry if that's whatever. And she'll be like, oh yeah, totally. It's totally fine. I'll call Tina. She'll call like one of her close friends. But even after I said no and she'd handled it well, I will think about it for hours. and I'll think
Yeah.
about how I let her down and she needed me and I wasn't there. And then if I'm in a real bad place, I'll spin out of control and think she might never call me again. Like, it's gotten somewhat better, but depending on what my headspace is and also depending on who it was, like, luckily I have a good relationship with my sister. Luckily I can kind of communicate that things. Luckily, if it was really like she really needed me, she'd be like, hey, if there's any way, I'm sorry to like, and we're also the same type of people pleaser. So we're both like, sorry, yes, sorry, no. Like, like we're both like, whatever. But I have a lot, like, even though I've gotten better at putting the boundaries down, I still have so much guilt in saying no to people. And that's the thing. That's where I am in the trying not to people please.
So when I like, but just now, because I'm a little insecure, I'm like, but I've like needed you a lot lately. Has it put you out?
No, right now I'm really not doing anything. No, I would on it, like, even a couple hours ago, I was like, hey, I got to finish this thing. I'll talk to you when I talk to you. Like, it's also, I think, assessing not only just the relationship, but the importance of things. I know where your head is right now. I've gotten better at saying no. It's just that certain times when and first of all, I haven't even said no. We've talked every single day.
I know, that's why I'm like, uh-oh.
Oh, no, I've gotten much better. I would say probably early in our relationship, if you were like, hey, do you want to get sushi? I'm like, we probably have to get sushi because I'll lose her as a friend. Like, there was a lot of like, not to say that I didn't want to, because I don't think I was, that's not true. I think I was having sushi
You
with
would have
people.
lost me as I'm like, she just want to get sushi.
They don't wanna get
Fuck this
sushi.
friendship.
I don't know if people enjoy hearing a cat in the background. So I'm like, do I let her cry?
I don't. Does that matter?
No,
No, I'm kidding.
no, what I'm saying is I can't figure out if I should just be getting up every time she freaks out. Like, did we both read Codependency No More?
I read it a long time ago and then I listened to it on audio again and I haven't finished it.
That's one of the books that I highly recommend and we should clearly obviously do an episode on codependency. I mean, I
I can't
struggle
believe we
with it.
haven't yet.
Yeah, especially because we bring up the word all the time and we're like, you guys know codependency. I do think Codependency No More is such a great book. It was written in the 80s. They've updated it a little bit and I still think it has value. I read it like a year ago, I guess. I think that kind of talks about why you're being a people pleaser. And I think understanding the root of why you're being a people pleaser also helps you create those boundaries and understand those boundaries. There's a couple of Instagram accounts that have been really helpful to me, like NY Therapist. She has these really dense quotes and then she'll kind of in the description explain what they mean. And she's just been able to like hit the nail on the head of how to set boundaries, why it's important to set boundaries, what people pleasing really means. Same with, I think it's, the holistic psychologist. She's really good as well. I mean, I send these things to you, but those are like the Instagram accounts that like often take these psychological problems and they've broken them down in a way that like
into memes.
Which is the more bite-sized way of sometimes understanding them. But then in the description, they'll have these big chunky paragraphs that just kind of help you break it down and have connection to it. Even just knowing that people pleasing was a form of manipulation, which really hurt to hear, by the way, because I was like, nah, I'm just a good person. I'm out here being good. I'm helping people move. But then when you realize like I would help people move that I wasn't even close with, and I would do it because I didn't know how to say no, or I felt like there was some kind of loss if I did say no. And then I would have some kind of form of resentment. And then all of a sudden you start to realize that you're having this undisclosed conversation that nobody knows about but you're holding real consequences to the other person and they have no idea. And isn't that like what manipulation is that you're pulling strings of people, but it's all under the surface. And that kind of is what helped me, is that all right, if I'm manipulating you, I'm trying to get you to give me money, it's all kind of under the surface where I'm just like, I'm not really doing really well right now. And, I have a cat to feed. And
okay, I think it's a world of difference between manipulating purposefully and subconsciously. Because I might be manipulative subconsciously.
I know exactly what you're trying to say. You're trying to say that if it's someone literally purposefully trying to pull at your heartstrings to get you to do something, that is evil manipulation. People pleasing, for the most part, is unconscious. It's something you were grown up to do. I was raised to be a people pleaser. I didn't choose to be a people pleaser. I was literally raised to put my feelings and my wants and needs under others as a form of not being hurt, as a form of holding love, what have you. At some point, there's an accountability to your behavior. And while it might not be manipulative in the sense that you were doing it purposefully, at the end of the day, the reaction is The reaction is still the same. You've still not fully communicated your actual needs and desires. You're still being an alternative form of who. Fuck off. I'm so mad at her right now. You're
She just bite you?
yeah. And it's also like the last couple of episodes, she's just been so bad. And I just feel like I look crazy. I feel crazy. I want to be like, she's 16. She's going to die soon. I'm just trying to be nice to her. But then she's mean to me. And I'm wearing your face on my sweatshirt. Like, I love you. Like, I agree with you. But I also think there's a lot of excuses made of I'm not purposely trying to hurt anybody, but we've used this quote before. Your childhood trauma is not your fault, but fixing it is your problem. Like, you know what I mean? You are
Your responsibility.
you need responsibility. You should be held accountable for fixing it. The same way that if I owned a house and the pipes burst and I flood my neighbor's yard, I didn't make the pipes. I didn't fuck up, but I own the house. I damaged your house. There's an accountability to what my house did to your house. You know what I mean?
Did you just come up with that analogy just now?
Yeah.
Well done. It's a good analogy. So
thank you. I was just like, do I sound stupid?
No, I was actually impressed.
Yeah. So I think that's what it is. And I think that's when I heard that people pleasing is a form of manipulation, and I come from, my dad can be very manipulative with love, and I do know it's unconscious. It really made me sad. It really made me not like myself, and it really made me just feel bad about myself. But I now know it. I now can see it, and now is setting in motions of not only not doing that to other people, but not doing that to myself, because I was getting a muted form of love from this practice. And so I do sometimes have to take a pause and go, am I doing this because I'm afraid I'm going to lose somebody? Or am I doing this because I want to show up for my friend? And that's how I like showing up for people.
That's such a good practical thing to keep in mind.
Exactly. And so going back to you saying, are you scared that you've called me a lot and leaned on me a lot if that's me people pleasing? The answer is no. I want to talk to you. I want to be there for you. I have the time. It's not an inconvenience. And this is how we show up for people. And you have equally shown up for me in that capacity. And I want to be able to do that back. But there are examples of people leaning on me. I think I muted that anger and that resentment, and now I see it more. So it might be like there's a young comic that I've helped. Very funny. I've helped him with a couple of things. And I thought it was just for this situation. We're talking about like 2 weeks time helping with the situation. But now the situation's over and he's still reaching out a shit ton. And I find myself being a little angry, and I've had to go, I'm just not going to respond to him right now. And I'm going to set the boundary of I'm not always reliable. And at some point I might have to go, hey, I'm happy to help you in the situation. I'm happy to help you here and there. But you're asking for too much from me. You're asking for like almost best friend amounts of energy. And you are at the very least a coworker that I'm being kind to. And I'm happy to help people, and people have helped me in that capacity. And I like helping people. But I can't be your wingman. I can't give Maria-like attention to everybody. There's only so much space for that. And so that's where I started to go, oh, I'm getting angry at this kid. What do I do about it? And I was like, okay, I'm going to start setting subtle boundaries. And then if he doesn't click with those, I'm going to have a conversation with him of, hey, I'm happy to help you once in a while with this thing, but I can't be your mentor. I can't be your bestie. I would, Andrew, I would suggest Codependency No More. I think you can learn a lot from it. It's a really well-written book that, weirdly enough, I think it was written in mid-'80s, but it still has so much value and still really holds up. And I still think is like one of the best books that breaks down codependency. And I think all that stuff is intertwined.
Thanks for writing in.
Thanks, Andrew.
Can you say that again without being mad at pasta?
I feel so much anger. Thanks, Andrew. We appreciate you writing in. I hope you edit out all the pasta yelling so it just looks like I'm crazy. Like I'm just kind of just like,
oh, that would be great.
Ready for Googles?
I am ready for just hallucinating. Sorry. I am ready for Googles. I'm really super excited to introduce our Google guest this week. Huge fan of his. It's Ben Folds.
Woo,
hi.
Woo.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I'm pretty fascinated, always have been, with comedians, the process. It's just the writing. I have comedian envy, I think. It's just really, the one thing I don't envy is that you have to constantly come up with new material, and I can play my old shit forever.
If they see you live and then they see you live again, they give you one other time to see that same material. They're not wrong, but you almost want to have like a sheet, like a sign-up sheet where you're like, Sarah, don't come to this one in Ohio. You've already seen it. Please don't be here. Don't bring your mom. You've already seen this stuff.
I loved one night, Sarah Bareilles was playing at some Enormo place, but close to the front, she obviously recognized a pair of mother and daughter from New York the night before, and this was in Nashville, so it was a long way away. And she goes, "Wait a minute, have you been at a few shows?" And they're like, "Yeah, we were in New York." And she goes, "You do realize tonight's the same fucking shit, right?"
Yeah.
Like,
it causes so much anxiety. I had, when I perform at Top Secret, it's a comedy club in London a lot. You know, I'll do 10-minute sets and every once in a while I'll do an hour. And these people had come out to see me based on a 10-minute set. But like when I got to the jokes that they had seen before, this girl kept finishing my punchlines.
Oh no.
Like as I was trying to tell the joke, and I was just like, yep, that was it.
Yeah.
Worst for me was this one guy at a fairly large venue in the front row beatboxing. And of course, no one else could hear that shit, but he and I knew what was going on. He's like, and I couldn't stand it. And I was trying to throw him off. So I'd speed up and slow down. It was a solo piano show. That's why I could hear it. It was all night long. The only person I knew was in the audience was that guy. And he was just sitting there.
And in his mind, he's just like, me and Ben, man.
Oh yeah, and for me, I'm like just counting the seconds. Just want to get.
But you would never say anything. You would never say like. That's like where we kind of, and I mean, Maria probably handles it with.
Don't listen to Liz. She's made audience members cry.
I've made a lot of people cry, but like I've
the opposite of comedy.
If we ever do end up on the same bill together, if I need you for a heckler,
I do like the idea that we're the two tiniest bouncers you've ever had. Like these two girls that are barely 5 foot, just are like, hi, stop it.
That person's beating me up. Help me out.
We're like, where is he? What'd you Google?
R95 mask versus N95 mask, because masks I ordered showed up and they had an R instead of an N.
Okay, what did it say?
So it's not like, it's like a STD thing or anything. So that's not as fun.
You're like, you guys are doctors, right? I could totally use your help.
Yeah. Do you know what the difference is between
one protects you from paint fumes and one protects you from pandemic viruses?
Close.
That was a huge guess.
Really
No, it's actually really close. The R implies that it also filters oil particulates, which would come from paint and stuff like that.
And is it thicker? So like the N95.
I think it's just different. I don't know. I think it's the same size. Yeah, kind of ish. I mean,
is that what it says on the box? Kind of.
Yeah. Good luck with that. There was such a move to poo-poo the N95 mask because they don't do that much good if you don't know how to put them on, or they're unsealed. If they have the little respirator thing, the little nozzle thing on it, then that's good for you, but not good for everyone else because you breathe out through that without a filter.
So it's like you're not even wearing a mask.
For everyone else, but for you, it's good.
I understand that they're more difficult to breathe in, but like, how did logically nobody go, there's a hole in my mask? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's literally a hole in it.
What I read is that when you breathe in, it sucks the little membrane in and it closes it off. Like it's all sealed. But when you breathe out, it pushes the little membrane forward, and you can breathe out easier so that it doesn't blow the mask out of shape. It's definitely better for the person wearing it.
I like the idea that I walk down the street, I'm like, you're selfish and you're selfish. Like just being like, and they're like, I'm wearing a mask. I'm like, you need to Google, you're selfish.
It's good to see you, Maria.
Good to see you too.
And good to see you too. And I want to do a show together so you guys can come out and bust some heads for me if people heckle.
I think we're there.
They'll think you're background singers. Then you just never open your mouth except to just go fuck with people.
Yeah. Hey, sir, fuck off.
Shut the fuck up. Stop beatboxing.
And then you turn around and we're like, you're good.
We got you.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, you want to go first?
Yeah. So my Google is what's Raynaud's disease? And I call it Raynaud's, and then I saw a way to pronunciate it. Apparently it's Raynaud's. But basically, I have poor circulation my fingers and toes.
Can I stop for a second? Did you already do this?
I was like, no, my Google is why is my fingers numb?
Okay, and it came up.
I don't know if it came up or if people said it might be that, but I've had it like, I've had doctors mention it might be that before.
Okay. I'm just making sure
we're doing it again.
Okay, I was just making sure.
So I got blood tests to see what was going on. I called the doctor and I was like, I don't know why, but like sometimes some of my fingers will go numb or my toes will go numb. And he was like, let's do blood tests. And then we did them twice and I guess they were fine. But I was on the phone with somebody the other day and like 3 of my fingers, like the first half of them in a diagonal went yellow. Like they went numb and they were straight up yellow, like a worrying amount. And I looked up Raynaud's, and if you look at the pictures, their fingers look like they're dipped in paint. Like they'll be straight white or yellow or blue. Like you should look up, I'll tell you how to spell it. Like look up the images. They're fucking so scary.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, doesn't it look like they just dipped their fingers in paint?
Yeah.
So mine wasn't as bad as that, but it was pretty bad, like enough for me to freak out.
Usually onset 15 to 30-year-old typical females.
So I guess I fit that. I mean, I might be
Risk
a little
factors,
older than...
cold, emotional stress. Oh God, Muffin.
Johnny never turns the heat on. I have a lot of emotional stress. Oh God, Muffin.
Oh God. I was like, oh, you need to go to the hospital immediately.
Yeah. And so it's not supposed to be dangerous. And it's just basically like, wear gloves. And you're like, yeah, obviously, like don't be cold. Then I started reading further and there's like first like primary and secondary Raynaud's. And I thought I had secondary. And then like, because you were like, oh, I'm going to be 5 minutes late to the podcast, I looked up secondary. And then it was like, this could lead to this, which could be deadly. And I was like, what? But then you got on and I didn't have time to look further into it.
I love that our research is always muted by us actually starting. And then we're just like, hey, I was in the middle of finding out if I was going to die today. Can I have a second?
I've had doctors suggest that I had Raynaud's just because of the tingling in my fingers, but I've never actually had my fingers turn colors. And I looked like I was dying. Like it almost gave me a panic attack. Like it was really scary.
How long does it last?
It was just a few minutes. Well, like it was like I could feel my hands going numb, and then the actual color was just a few minutes, and then it took a while to get back to like the circulation. I was on the phone with someone trying to they're trying to explain this thing to me, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like I just couldn't.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm turning into a ghost. Can I have a second? So is a solution literally putting on like warm gloves in your home?
I mean, the solution is like it's like staying warm, exercising, staying circulate, like things that'll get your circulation going and like kind of.
Oh, like just being naturally the most healthy person of all time.
They say you can like massage your fingertips and stuff like that. But
and it's just your hands?
I've never seen my feet change colors. That was the only time my fingers changed colors. But like I'll have numbness in my toes or my fingers. So thanks. Awesome. What if you were a doctor?
I am a doctor. You tell me all your symptoms. Weird. I was like, weird, bro.
Oh, dude.
And they're like, do you have a degree? You're like, yeah, but they didn't teach me any bedside manner.
That shit is fucked.
Could you imagine? I'm just like, gross.
You're Googling it? Wow.
Oh my God, I can't wait for us to spin off and have a practice where people just come in and tell us our symptoms and we just make fun of them. Yeah. We like roast people's symptoms. Okay. So I guess my last question is I guess you can't tell what that is from a blood test. Is there any other, is it really just like a visual thing? Like, is that the only way to diagnose it?
I assumed you could diagnose it from blood tests. And so when that doctor never got back to me after the second blood test, and then when I called the NHS about another thing, that doctor looked at my blood tests and they were like, oh, they look normal. So I don't know if it does show up in blood tests. I don't have it, but yeah, like it must just be that, your hands go numb and they turn bright colors and it's very off-putting. I mean, they should teach you all of this when you're like 7, so it doesn't come as a surprise when you have your first panic attack or you have your first Raynaud's thing. Like it's just like, oh, we were told about this.
In general, they don't talk about any of the kind of psychological pain, that kind of stuff. But my Google's inconclusive, and I think you've had inconclusive Googles, but this is the first time that I was like, fuck you, internet. My cat's been waking up at 5 a.m. And this new thing for the last maybe 2 months is, and I sleep sometimes on my stomach or on my side, like kind of holding a pillow. And so the thing is like she'll cry at 5 a.m. I'll like pat my bed. She jumps on the bed and she'll either make like a nest out of my side and my pillow and sleep on me like that, or which happens probably more often is I'm sleeping on my stomach and she'll sleep on my back, like my lower back to mid back. I already kind of have not the greatest back, but my Google was, can having extra weight on you while sleeping deteriorate or damage your body, your bones or your joints or whatever? The internet could not figure out what I was trying to ask. They were like, yes, being overweight can hurt your joints. I was like, that's not what I'm saying. So then I was like, okay, maybe I'll just pretend she's a weighted blanket, because she is, like, you're supposed to have, I think when you do weighted blankets, it's about 10% of your body weight. And she's about 12 pounds. I'm about 112 pounds. I was like, all right, she's like a weighted blanket, but it's like I balled up the blanket and it's on my back. So then I was like, it is having a weighted blanket. I was like, is having an animal sleep on you bad for you? And then of course it was like, sometimes cats cuddle because they like your warmth, or maybe they do love you. Like, it was like, I went on like
maybe they do love you, but it's probably just your body.
So it kept going on all these tangents, and finally I did put in like, is having a weighted blanket bad for your body? And of course, again, I had to go through, but eventually there was like some blog where the girl was just like, got a weighted blanket. Maybe a little while later, I didn't put it together. I started having really bad back and like joint pains, went to all these doctors, could not figure it out, got all these drugs, didn't fix it. Then I kind of deduced, found my receipt, realized that like 3 weeks after getting this weighted blanket, that was only 10% of her body weight, was when the symptoms started. Got rid of the blanket, her body after about a week healed and felt better. So maybe it's not permanent. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe if it's, but like, I guess I am a little worried because like right now my upper back really hurts, like between my shoulder blades. Sometimes she sleeps there. Sometimes she sleeps on my lower back, but like everything was kind of inconclusive, but I'm assuming it's not great. Luckily she's like an average cat, and I don't have like a big fat cat, which are the cutest cats, if I'm being honest. I love a fat cat. You just had to put that out there.
Love my brother's cat Clark. It's the fattest cat. I have the same issue. Like Johnny will put his leg on me while we're sleeping, and vice versa. I'll put my leg on him. So comfortable. But like with him, I'm like, can you remove it from my waist and onto my butt? Like I feel like my butt and hips, because that's where you're supposed to like hold babies. Like, I'm like, I can handle your leg there. But if you put on I worry about the small of my back when he puts his leg there.
I remember my ex, he would cuddle me, and clearly he's a bigger guy than me. And sometimes I'd wake up and he's like almost half his body is on my body, which is like, okay when you're falling asleep. But I would literally be like, my shoulder is like almost folded under, because I already sleep on my body and I know it's doing damage. So my body weight is on it, and then his body weight was on it. This feels like someone took a hammer to it, because it has at least over 200 pounds all night on it. But I've had to be like, you're killing me. I'm like, you're slowly murdering me in the middle of the night. And I feel like my cat's doing the same thing, but just ineffectively. She's like, I'll lay on top of her and then she'll be dead. And then she's like, every morning she wakes up. I don't understand. I'm trying to strangle her with my fur. Okay, let's get personal.
Yes.
When have you ignored your gut and it's gotten you into trouble?
I follow my gut instincts, and for a lot of things. But I remember when I was proposed to, it took me a long time. It took me about a week before I put it on Facebook, and it took me the entire day before I told my roommate. And then when I called my dad, it took me to the end of the conversation, and he was like, what? And I think I should have paid attention to my reluctance to tell people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a huge sign when you're like engaged and you don't want to tell anybody. That I had no, like I knew that was bad, but like, I ignored it. Because, for whatever reason, it's like, maybe I'm just scared, or I don't know.
I think you can like almost justify it. You're like, well, this is a big decision. But
as we both know, it didn't turn out very well. So that's one time I should have listened to that instinct and gone, well, I mean, what would I would have done? Like I said yes. And well, my gut is do you need to do something you feel?
I know, I'm listening.
Precarious. I need to blow my nose. 1 second.
Okay.
All right. But so basically what I'm saying is like, I don't picture me going, hey, instinctually, I don't feel super 100%, you know, like it was just sort of like, this is happening.
Yeah, also like you still cared about him and wanted to be with him. It's just like marriage didn't, that felt like too quickly of a step because it was also pretty early in your relationship, right? And so, I mean, doesn't that feel not people pleasing exactly, but by saying no, the relationship might be over and you don't want the
Right.
relationship to be over. So then you feel pressure to say yes, but getting married right now isn't exactly what you want.
Like we had dated for 6 months. Was going to spend the summer in London, but he came out to LA, and I don't know what he must have felt pressure on his end. Like I don't think he was ready either. I think we were both lying to ourselves, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's tons of examples for me. I guess, and this one's kind of a hard one because I was really young. I was 15, and there was a guy in my group of friends that liked me or was attracted to me. I don't know, but I wasn't really interested. But like, I guess I would make out with him anyway. But I was like, I don't really like him. And then when we would make out, he would make me feel uncomfortable. I was so young, and also like, I take some responsibility that I still would make out with him. But I remember we were in Princeton, and it was always like a public thing. You know what I mean? Like you're in a square or like you're with a group of friends. Like it was never like we were alone. But I remember he wanted me to walk him to his car, and we all parked near this graveyard. And that's not the creepy part. It was just the easiest place to find parking. So we all parked there, but it was about 10-15 minute walk from where everybody else was hanging out. And I walk him to his car, and he was going to drive me back to the square. And so I get in the car. I think we might have made out. I don't remember because it was just like a kind of traumatic experience. But he put my hand on his dick, and I was like, no, thank you. Like I was like, no. And then he did it again, and I was like, oh no, thank you. And then he
You
got
must
like,
not have understood what I was doing the first
yeah,
time.
I was like, oh, maybe he thinks my hand, like, I was like, yeah, no, thank you. And so the second time I was like, I guess I'm walking. I guess I'm going to walk like almost like a shitty bus driver. I'm like, I guess you don't do your job. So I went to get out of the car, and the door doesn't work. And I'm freaking out. It's not a childlike thing. It's like literally there's no door handle. It was just a shitty car. Freaking out. Now I have to make a decision. You know, what I ended up doing is I got on top of him, I straddled him, and then I took the door handle and I ran that way. And then I probably drove home. Again, I barely remember this because I was so freaked out. And then I just ignored my friend group for over a year. I didn't tell anybody. It was like a group of guys and girls, and we all hung out. I just stopped going. And it took about a year for me to finally say something. And then, of course, when I did, we still hung out, but my friends were like a little more like, keep Liz away from this dude. But I knew this guy, every time I interacted with him, he made me feel unsafe. He made me feel uncomfortable. He made me feel not like he had a crush on me, like he liked me, but like almost like I was a prey. Like nobody else is making out with Liz, because everybody else was like dating these guys. Everybody was kind of dating, and I was always like the single one. And it just felt like I was like this low hanging fruit of like I could probably do whatever I want with Liz. And I wasn't that person. I was just like, I don't like you. But this dude specifically always made me feel so undervalued, and that he was like, there was like a prey thing about it. And I remember walking to his car and feeling like something bad was going to happen. And then that did. And I clearly, as a 15-year-old, was not prepared for that. Like I was like, I said no, and he didn't listen. And I was like, this could be bad. And I'm fortunate that it wasn't as bad as it could be. When it comes to dating and it comes to being alone with men, my first thought is, if I feel uncomfortable and we're out in the open and everything is safe, how I'm going to feel when the doors close. How am I going to feel when I'm alone with them? And that's kind of helped me in my adulthood of just don't risk it. You know what I mean? And I had to learn that lesson a couple of times. He was in my group of friends. It even shows where I was in my headspace. I just didn't tell anybody because I didn't think they would choose me. Like I didn't tell any, I just left my group of friends because I didn't think I would tell them that I didn't like this guy and he made me uncomfortable and they would lose me. And then I did tell them and they're like, fuck that guy.
Yeah, that's good. But like, I mean, I heard that story a lot, like when the Me Too movement was really like, when there were a lot of stories coming out, like people were afraid to come out because they were afraid of being blamed. It was going to be their fault. And then they would lose their career because of something someone else did. And like, yeah. So, I mean, it's not, I don't think what you felt was uncommon. And yeah, Plus that it
Even
was
in
by
that
a
story,
cemetery, like you're
yeah, yeah.
running.
Even in telling that story, I was like, I did make out with him. I did, you know what I mean? It's so funny when I think about it. I remember walking to his car and being like, I shouldn't be doing this. Like,
Mm.
he's not to be trusted.
But you get a little bit wiser as you get older, like because you have had enough of those experiences where you're like, I didn't
Sadly.
listen to my gut and this is what happened. So now I'm gonna listen to my
Yeah.
gut, which
Yeah.
brings us to our topic actually.
It
So
does
we can
bring
go
us
right
to our
into
topic.
it.
Yeah. So what's really interesting about it is I think you picked it. You picked instinct and intuition. I spent all this time researching intuition and I was like, what is instinct? They're completely different, by the way.
Are they? Because like I started looking up intuition and like all I was getting was like psychic shit. And I was like, I'm not talking about psychic shit. I'm not talking about psychic ability or anything. I'm talking about okay, so maybe I meant
Okay.
instinct.
Okay, so intuition is like you draw from like your memory well, like you make decisions that are kind of subconscious based on data. And like this woman talked about thin slices. So thin slices or thin slicing is experiencing that are like glimpses, like you see a picture and you take in data, or you have a brief conversation. I've 180'd on this field. I remember being in my 20s and I would meet a comedian, I would go to a party, something would happen, and me and my friends would leave. And you know this because I would do this to you all the time. You'd be like, oh, she seems nice. I'm like, I hate her. Like I would have this strong, and you'd be like, dude, we talked to her for like 30 seconds at a party. I was like, no. In that time, you'd be like, why? And I'd be like, I don't know. You know, 20s me would feel really guilty because somebody would ask me, well, what are you picking up on? What did they do? What did they do to you? What did they say to you that makes you viscerally not like them? And I would always come up short. I'd be like, nothing. And then intuition really shows you that in a person setting, you're picking up on a bunch of stuff. So like a party, when you go to a party and someone's like looking for the better person to talk to, like the more famous person or the
Yes.
whatever.
I lived in LA for 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. Or like they're constantly on their phone. And these are just like kind of bigger examples, but you're picking up on like facial things, you're picking up on stuff. Sometimes it's not even conscious, but you're picking up on stuff that's making you feel uncomfortable, making you angry, making you feel triggered, whatever it is. And that's called like thin slicing. And a lot of decisions are made from that. But really, intuition is pattern recognizing. It's past data. It's clearly that gut feeling or whatever. And then instinct, it's biological. It's like they basically say our three biological drives or instincts are self-preservation, sexual, and social. They kind of say like walking is a little bit learned and a little bit instinct, but for the most part, almost every human walks. You know what I mean? Like almost every mammals? Yeah, anything that feet. I'm sounding dumber than I want to sound. Will eventually walk. It can maybe change over time, but a lot of this stuff is like you're pre-programmed when it's an instinct. They say women that have like bigger hips tend to be seen as more attractive, but really that's because bigger hips mean probably able to birth better or like more fertile. Like there's a bunch of like, so unconsciously guys might be attracted to women with bigger butts or bigger hips because it's about procreating and about the human race continuing. And that might not even be a conscious thing. That's an instinct.
So gut feeling is intuition.
Gut feeling is intuition, and gut feeling comes from every time I go to get my COVID test and I go at 8:00, there's no line. I'm the first person in line. Every time I go at 8:05, there's like 50 people. So I'm always going to get there early. Because that happened with the COVID test, maybe fast forward, there's vaccines. And I'm like, the lines are always shorter if you go early. Do not go after work. You got to go early. But I've never gotten a COVID vaccine. I'm just taking the data from all the COVID tests I've had and I'm putting it towards something else. So I think we rely on our gut feelings for comedy. Sometimes, like, do you ever get those young comics that are like, how do you know when a joke is done? How do you know it's going to be funny? And you're like, you just know. You do it enough and you don't
Well,
need
I think they want reassurance to avoid bombing, but it's like sometimes you don't know. You have to try it and just be okay
Yeah.
with failing.
Absolutely. But also, how many times have you written a joke? You've tested it on no one and you're like, this is good. Maybe it needs some tweaks and whatever, but you're like, this is pretty great.
Yeah,
But
yeah, like you have an instinct for when something is solid enough to take to the stage. You're just
absolutely.
like, this is good.
Or even just an instinct that it's not working, but you know it's going to get better. Like you have enough experiences, you have enough kind of belief in yourself. But what they're saying is instincts is guttural. And also it's not reliable. Like that's what you really kind of learn from this, is that it can be easily swayed as well. Like to the point where like you know, my boyfriend, let's say my boyfriend breaks up with me, and then I have to go interview a bunch of male assistants, you know, I might not have the best, you know what I mean? I might not be feeling great about men right now. And my instincts might be off because either I'm associating this person's behavior with my ex who just hurt my feelings. Have you ever heard you didn't get like an acting job because they're like, you look like somebody I don't like stuff that has, you have no control. They're just like, my ex was Egyptian and she broke my heart. And you're like, hey man, like
I feel like I have to, nobody likes Geminis. I feel like I'm always like putting up with Gemini bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, hey man, we're not all the worst. I mean, we're not great, but we're not all the worst. Oh, why didn't two Gemini? I don't know. There's something there. Remember that.
Okay.
That feeling isn't finished, but
you have an instinct for it though.
We're gonna do something with Geminis. There was a Psychology Today article that I got too into. That's why I was just like, give me 5 minutes. Basically, they were saying that like research shows that intuition, it's not exactly a reflex, but it is quick, and you're no longer doing something intuitive if you're overthinking it. And that's why, like, they gave a really good example of a stick shift car. At some point, it just becomes intuitive. But if you overthink it, you all of a sudden you don't know stick shift anymore. Like if you think about it too much.
And like practicality, like it's like deciding whether to move or not. I'm like, I've overthought it. I've absolutely cannot find my instincts on this. Yeah. I've tried just been like, all right, what do I think? You know, and I'm just like, I go, okay, no. And then like images of it will keep popping back into my mind. And I'm like, so yes. And then I just like, which is it? I don't know.
Also, because I think you're a very intuitive person, I also think in some areas it's extremely strong. It's innate. It's a part of your personality. It might not even be learned. It's there. And then in other areas, you try to lean on it and it's just not there. So they gave an example of like, you might be intuitive with people and work, but with money, you're horrific. So like for me, I think I'm extremely intuitive when it comes to comedy, when it comes to making business choices. But I definitely think men, you know what I mean? Like there's certain things, and that might just be like when we like somebody, we override you know what I mean? Like
I think 100%. Like I think that if I actually do like somebody, like my intuitions are garbage. Like I don't see anything.
I actually think sometimes they're there, but like we have like a little button and like it almost feels like a red alarm is going off, and I'm just like, we'll just silence that right now. Like they're like, hey, and I'm just like, we'll just take the batteries out of that.
It's not that bad. You're overreacting.
Yeah. You're just like, you're like your monoxide port.
I really don't think instincts work with romantic relationships, but I do think that they work with just like deciding to work with someone, deciding to be friends with somebody, like meeting people. Like you said, it's the thin slicing, it's the split second instincts. Have you ever been wrong about like somebody, like where you met them and you're like, don't like them, and then you get to know them and you're like, actually, they're fucking great?
A million times. There's this guy, Mike, that we're now really close friends. And I was the asshole in this situation. We met for the first time on a Sirius XM radio show where we both were promoting our album. So this was like maybe 3 years ago. I don't know. He just rubbed me the wrong way. And then I did something super asshole. Like I think he mentioned where he recorded his album. And I said something shitty about the club. We're on the radio, by the way. It just came out of my mouth. And it took me probably a couple of days to realize how shitty that was. It took me even longer to apologize to him, but I had already not liked him, but it took me, like I said, like maybe like a week or two for me to be like, that was really shitty. And even if I don't like him, I'm going to apologize. We ended up seeing each other at the Cellar, talking. I don't know how we ended up becoming close, but like one of my favorite people, I go, hey, can I just apologize? And he's like, for what? And I brought that thing up again. He goes, yeah, it was really shitty. It was really shitty. And I was like, you're right. It was 100% shitty. And I needed you to know that like, clearly I didn't recognize it in the moment, but I did recognize it and I am sorry. And it was extremely inappropriate. And he goes, I appreciate that. And we were already starting to have a budding friendship and then it just got bigger. But like,
that's nice.
But he must have done something that pissed me off that I felt it was okay for me to like shit on where he was donating all the proceeds of his album to like the military or like something that helped veterans or something. Like
you're a bitch.
Full blown. Like it's so funny that I was like, this guy's an asshole. And I'm just like, he had every right to just be like, this girl's a fucking bitch. Like I did everything you could do wrong. I did wrong. But somehow I thought it was okay because I decided he wasn't good. Just craziness.
So then our instincts do we even listen to them? Because it seems like they're not always trustworthy. Sometimes I feel like I follow my instincts, right? Like I followed my instincts into comedy. I followed my instincts getting a job at a comedy club before I even knew I wanted to be a comedian. I followed my instincts to New York. I followed my instincts to LA. I followed my instincts to London. And then, well, not really that one, but
You followed a dude
oh
to
yeah,
London.
the original London, not the dude London, but like
Yeah,
going in
yeah,
the
yeah.
first place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Okay,
after the
I'll give you that.
military tour, I followed my
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
instincts there.
Yeah.
Then after a while, I want to go like, "Hey, instincts, what the fuck?" And have them be like, "Oh, you were following us because we were following you."
Yeah, 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 yeah. We're just like, oh, she keeps driving this car in this direction.
Yeah, and so I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Like at first, I was like, "Oh, I'm really listening to I was proud of myself. It's listening to my intuition. It's guiding me through life. I'm making all these artistic choices that are riskier choices, but I'm so proud of myself." And then I get to a point, and I'm just like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know if I should have like followed my instincts that much."
So this was interesting. They said intuition is sensing and insight is seeing. So there's even a bigger distinction between what insight is. So insight you can explain, intuition is like it's a sense, it's a judgment. It's unsure if it's right or wrong. So insight you could be like, well, I moved to New York and it was the best decision I ever made to get good at comedy, to meet the right people and to take my passion and my career to the next level. And everybody that's in New York eventually moves to LA. So I'm going to move to LA so that my career can go to the next level. And then I love traveling. I've always seen myself in another country, and comedy is really big in London. So if I always saw myself and wanted to live abroad, London is the right place, not maybe France, which was my original dream, because I want to continue to. So like there is in some ways some insight rather than maybe intuition that drove you. I don't know. I mean, that's where it gets kind of challenging. Like they even said like with being in not intuitive crap, these I words are so confusing. Instinct, what's confusing is that like your intuition is pretty quick, but so is your instinct is also pretty quick. So survival and survival of your family is an instinct. So you hear those stories of like a car falls on a child and a mom picks up, a huge car and saves their baby. One, where did that strength come from? But what made her just immediately think to pick it up? That's instinct. That's the drive to preserve her family and survival. Intuition is going to be, I have to make a quick decision. It's going to be somewhat cultivated on how I feel. And then you have insight, which is every time I go to this party, someone makes me feel bad about myself. I think I might not like this group of friends. I might not like this party. I'm not going to go. And that's basing all that and that's like a thoughtful, logical.
What about that voice that just tells you to quit your job and pursue your comedy full time, or the voice that tells you to move, or the voice that tells you to go to that meetup group and you might meet somebody interesting? Like I feel like there's that inner voice.
And I think in some ways that's why so many cool and interesting and good things have happened to you, but it's not always accurate. So I think what we do, and some of this article said that, is we put every time something, this is what they said in the article, and it actually made a lot of sense. Every time you do something that's intuitive and it works out, you don't write down, I listened to my gut and I actually got that guy's number, or I listened to my gut and that woman gave me the job. So we can't look back, because if we did, you would see that you got the guy's number, but he turned out to be an asshole, and you got the job, but it was shitty pay and you accepted it anyway. And you should have just said no to it, but you didn't. And you start to find out that not every time does it actually work out. So I think we have a disproportional reliance on remembering when intuition did serve us well.
You're coming to some Buddhist conclusion of like, you can't judge any moment or anything. It's not good or bad. It just is. I feel like that's what we're getting to.
In some ways, yes. But also when you do use your intuition and it, let's say, works out, we remember it because we're like, I listened to my gut and it worked out. And that's like the American way, is like, I did what I wanted and it fucking worked out, as opposed to I did what I wanted and it hurt people, or I did what I wanted and it didn't work out, or I did what I wanted and I got hurt. We kind of go, no. You know what I mean?
I love that American way though. Like, you come to Europe and you meet a lot of countries that don't have that like follow your dreams mentality, and
but also
Americans got that right.
Yeah, but we believe Americans got that right because we're an individualistic society. If you're from Japan or from a country that's more communal, we could give tons of examples with COVID and how that hasn't served us right. I'm not going to wear a mask. That's not, I don't need to wear a mask. You can go into a whole bunch of stuff like
That's
that.
not what I'm saying though. Like, I don't know.
Oh,
I feel like my words got a little
you can,
convoluted there.
and
I mean,
I
I'm
might
not
have,
saying like it's nice to have people say, go with your instincts, follow your dreams, blah, blah, blah. And then we got into like anti-maskers and
no,
I
that's
feel
my
like I've
fault.
been grouped in with that. So
No, I'm not. Well, I'm not trying to group you in with that. Two, I'm just saying, like, I guess what I was saying is that we reward instinct in this society as opposed to in other societies that instincts might not be rewarded, or they might not even be developed, which I think is probably more the route you were going on, which is what they even say in this article is that you can make them stronger.
yeah.
Here's from the let's get personal question. This is a really silly example of not following my gut. I am very easily swayed when trying on clothes, when the personnel person gives you a compliment, especially if I'm shopping by myself, which I actually like shopping by myself, because if I went shopping with you and you're like, that looks cute, I might be like halvesy on it. I might be like, I don't know. And it's, it's $40. And do I really need to send it? But you might be like, dude, you look amazing in that. And I'd be like, well, Maria thinks I look amazing and she has great taste. Maybe I should get it. And then a week later, I'm not even in that country anymore. I have a dress I'm never going to wear. I spent $40. I shouldn't have. I start to get angry. And the same thing happens with like personnel. I feel like they do this too. When the mirror is outside of the door.
Yeah.
And you have to leave the dressing room to look at yourself.
Yeah.
And then there's just some lady that looks cuter than you. That's like, dude, you look amazing. And you're like, do I? I feel like it makes my hips look big. And I don't know, it just doesn't fit right. And they're like, no, just scrunch it like this. There's still some scrunches. You're going to look amazing. And you're like, she says I look amazing. And I realize I can't listen to that lady. I can't be around that lady. I always end up buying shit I do not wear and I do not like.
But can I tell you I feel like it's my foolproof plan for living your life. When I'm in a dressing room and I'm trying on clothes, if I do a little dance, I'm buying that outfit. And that is how I felt like when I was like, should I move to LA? And the first time I said it out loud to somebody, like, I'm going to move to LA. And I was just like, oh, like, and I just did a little dance. And I was like, I'm on the right track. So just say it out loud and then see if it might just be like, when I said I wanted to do comedy out loud, I felt like it felt so like weird and like, oh, did I just say I wanted to be a clown? Like, it just felt like that ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it was also really exciting. So if I say like, Liz, I'm going to move in 2 weeks, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. And I think some of that, now that we're giving this dressing room example, but it's actually kind of important because we're such opposite people. My thing is I try on something and I go, I like it, but I just don't know if it's worth the cost, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to leave it. If I'm still thinking about it in 4 days, I'll go back and get it. And if it's not there, it wasn't meant to be. I'm very much, because I've made so many mistakes of listening to others, and I know I'm easily swayed listening to others. If I'm not doing a little dance in a room, I have to go logical. So what I understand about memory is your short-term memory is like, I think it's like 30 seconds. It's like really quick, and everything else goes into long-term memory. So I have a really bad short-term memory, but I have a pretty good long-term memory. But long-term memory is really, I might be botching what the number is, but it really is like 30 seconds or longer goes into long-term memory. So the same thing with, I wonder where intuition is. Like, what's the time frame of intuition? Is it 10 seconds? Is it 30 seconds? When does it cut off from intuition into insight, or is it logical planning? That's where I get a little confused.
Well, if anybody has any insight or intuition about this,
I would love to. Yeah, if anybody can, I don't know, break down intuition to something that's a little bit more bite size.
Or stories about how it's worked out for you, even though Liz doesn't think anything works out in the end.
I've reread Eckhart Tolle like I was supposed to, and he really just said nothing is good or bad. Everything's just there.
It's good is this podcast.
Please write to us at 2non-doctors, 2non-full-word-doctors@gmail.com. And we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.